Okay, welcome back. We've already allowed everything to dry. I've now taken off the clamps and now we're ready to install reinforcements. I've already installed one reinforcement and that one was up here. It's basically like a quarter round and it supports this tip here. What we're going to do now is put a support on this tip and then on this tip. And that's to stop them from moving around from environmental changes. So, I've got my reinforcements made. One's going to go here, and one's going to go here. Like that. So let's go ahead and put them on. Just a little bit of glue. And then after the glue dries, what I'll do is I'll put some countersunk holes in and then install these screws, and then we'll cap them with a little cap. So I'm going to install this guy right about here. Make sure I get it the right direction. And that's where I want it. So I'll clamp it in place with a block on the other side. And let's just go ahead and do that. Yep, that looks where I want it, so we'll clamp it there. And then we'll do the other side. Same thing. Put a little glue on it. And clamp it in place. Sometimes you kind of wish you had 5 hands, but looks pretty good right there. Clamp them in place, and we'll let them set up. So that's those in place. Depending on how you work this hole out right down here, you may have to put in a reinforcement in here, but I don't think I'll have to do that. But just in case. So what I'm trying to do is, if you remember when we originally cut all of this out to size, I had blocks across these to hold everything together, for the very fact that when you start cutting these to size, you end up having 2 pieces. Well, in order to keep the alignment, what I do is I put a block here with double face tape and some screws, and here for double face and screws. And the screw holes I'm not really worried about, because I knew I was going to cover them up with these blocks. So that's what that's all about. The next thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to Okay, the next thing that we're going to want to do is that we're going to want to install the pivot for the ball release. And what I have here is I got the pivot that we cut out on our CNC, and I got a piece of 3/8 PEX. And the 3/8 PEX is going to act as a bushing. So consequently, what I'm going to want to do is kind of figure out where this guy's going to be. Because what it's going to do is it's going to sit here and pivot and allow the ball to come through. So in order to figure that out, I'm going to have to kind of experiment a little bit. So I'll cut my PEX to a reasonable length here, and then I can move this up and down on the PEX because it is on the pecs, and that's going to be my bushing. And then I can kind of figure out where I want the location of this thing to pivot. So let's get a couple balls out here, and we're going to put them in, let them come down, and see where we need to be. I'm thinking about right there, but that may be too far in because we need to release the ball, and this detent here holds the second ball in place. We open it up and then let the ball fall out again. I'm pretty good, I think, about right there. So what I'll do is I will mark it to about where I want it to be, and then I will drill a 1/4 inch hole because the hole in here is a 1/4 inch, and that'll give me my pivot point. And I'm thinking that might be where I want to be, because if I come all the way out here, let's try that again. That's looking pretty good. This location here seems pretty good. So again, what you want is when it's out like this, this detent holds it, this detent holds it, and then when you push it in, you want it close enough that this one grabs it. I'm thinking right there is where I want to be. So let's do that. Yeah, let's try that. And I think what I'm going to do first is just put a screw in it to make sure this is where I want it to be. I'm pretty sure that's where I want it to be. So let's go ahead and measure how far that is in from this edge here. Okay. So let's tip this over so we can figure out where this is going to be. It'll be around in here somewhere. So we'll mark that. Then we'll tip it back up, and let's go ahead and mark this one here. And we'll go ahead and drill that. Okay, now let's go ahead and try this out. I'm just going to use the drill bit as the pivot point. Okay folks, we're now got all of our assembly done, and now we're ready to start finishing. So now that we've made sure everything works correctly, and again, you got to go through this assembly process before you do your finishing, but this is what you want it to do. And the biggest part of this is getting this arm balanced right. And the way I did it was, let me take this off of here. One of the toughest things that we got to do on this thing is balance this arm. And the way I did it was, I cut a 2-inch hole, well, not a hole, a pocket here, and used an 1.25 inch PCV cap, cut it down, and then put in big washers that are 3/4 inch washers, and then 1/4 inch washers in the center. These are real little ones, and this gets you so you can fine tune it. And at this point in time, then after I've put what I thought should be in there, I put this all back together, try it out. See if it works. If it doesn't, come back, add or subtract as necessary. So that's how I did that. And puts enough weight in there that I don't have to worry about it. And being that this fits really tight to the big washers, I don't have to worry about it either. We're going to sand this down somewhat smooth, and then we're going to paint it. I'm going to paint it black. The reason is that this PCV, when you machine it, is really, really porous, and it'll pick up any dirt that you have. So it's really necessary to paint it. So this part is disassembled. Okay. Now the next part that I'm going to disassemble. Okay, we're going to disassemble this pivot for this release. Basically all I have is a 1/4 inch bolt that I turned the threads off of. Just ground the threads off with a drill. And I made the pivot point here a slot, so I can take that off so I can get this slot. I made it a slot right here. Right here is a slot so that I can get adjustment in order to get my pivot in the right place. Now the next part to take off is our pivot down here, and it's just held in by 2 Phillips screws. And I made this piece out of a piece of 2-inch aluminum and just bent it into shape that I needed. And I will paint this black also. Okay, we're ready to sand in between coats. I've already put a coat of polyurethane on from this Extreme Protection Polyurethane from Crystalac, one of our sponsors, so support them. So we're going to lightly scuff this up, and then we're going to put another coat of polyurethane on. So let's get on with the show. So, taking my 320 and just giving it a little scuff coat, get rid of all the dust nibs and stuff like that. So our next coat has a nice even surface on it. That seems pretty good. Let's stand it up now. Let's do up in here. Again, all I'm trying to do is scuff it up, get all the dust nibs off, so our next coat has a nice finish, a nice base to lay upon the next one on. Like I said, I don't scuff it a lot because I did a lot of good sanding to begin with, so I shouldn't have to do a whole lot of scuffing on it. If you have any runs, make sure you take care of those. If you're worried about cutting through the rest of it, one of the things you can do is like where your run is, if you have a run, one of the things you can do so you don't cut through it so bad is take a piece of tape, put next to the run on either side of it, now essentially all you're going to do is sand on the run. The tape will protect the rest of the finish from being overcut. And then we can basically remove our run. Get rid of the run, pull the tape, the rest of the finish is protected. Voila! Again, all we're trying to do is get the nubs off. So our next coat goes on nicer. And as you can see, I don't spend a bunch of time because I'll feel it and see wherever my nubs are, and I'll do a little sanding on it. Be careful on the edges because you don't want to cut through. And feel things. And wipe it down and blow it off. Take some air and blow it off. Now we're ready to put the next coat on. So I got a low pressure, high volume gun, and I've got my polyurethane already loaded. So essentially what I'm going to do is just put a coat on it. Overlapping 50%. Get into all those crannies. Welcome back, everybody. I just got done doing all the finishing on here. We put a clear coat on our little lever, clear coated the whole ball setter itself, our little bracket I painted, and our arm I painted. So we're now ready for final assembly. Some of the things that we need for final assembly are a screwdriver, maybe a pair of pliers, a little wrench, and our assortment of screws and springs. This little piece of tubing here is, I believe, this little piece of tubing here is 3/8 PEX. So, and what that's for is it act as a bushing for our post. So our post, this moves back and forth easily. So the first thing we're going to do is put on our bracket over here. So we'll need 2 little screws, our bracket, and a Phillips screwdriver. So go ahead and put our bracket on here. Now when you originally set all of this up when you were dry fitting everything before we did any finishing, so all your holes should be here in the right place to locate your bracket correctly. Obviously use those holes to install your bracket now. Okay, now we got that bracket installed. The next thing we have to do is put the screw in for our post. And this screw fits into the bottom of the post, and this is a 1/4 inch by 2 inch post. I put a couple washers on the bottom so they don't pull through our hole. I've already got a witness mark of where my washer was when I set it all up. Now I just go ahead and install the nut, and I put 2 nuts on because I need it as a spacer, plus it acts as a backup or locking nut. So get in here, put our wrench on here so we can tighten it up, and we'll tighten it up right there. Okay, those are good and tight. Let's go ahead and stand it up. Now we're ready to install our pedal here. Get our spring. I made this spring to fit, so it's kind of unique. Got some piano wire and just built my own spring. The instructions will have a list of these little parts that I've got and where I purchased them from. And all the spring does is return it so that it's in the right place. Now we can install our arm. It just goes into the slots, and now we can try it out. So let's fill it up to try it out. So let's put some balls in here. And let's try it out. Voila! Success! I want to thank all of my sponsors. KenCraft for supplying the wood materials. Next Wave for having us do the project. Crystal Lac for furnishing all of the polyurethane paints for this project. So be sure to support our sponsors, and see you at the next project.